Late evening of December 10th, in the temporarily occupied Sovetske, not far from Jankoy, a barracks is on fire. Eyewitnesses publish video of the fire. Headquarters and bases of the Russian military, ammunition depots, oil depots and airfields. Information about explosions and fires at military facilities in the Russian-occupied Crimea regularly appears in the media. The occupation authorities did not declare martial law on the peninsula, but bomb shelters are being checked and prepared in full force. Signs are placed at the entrances of residential buildings and schools.
At a parents' meeting in Crimean schools, they urged to donate money for the purchase of bio-toilets, coolers and first aid kits for the arrangement of bomb shelters. According to available information, in the cities of the peninsula, shelters are being arranged not only in schools, but also in shopping malls, large stores and public places. Oleksiy Tilnenko, head of the board of the human rights organization Crimea SOS, in an interview with Crimea Realities.
Fortifications are also being built in the Crimea. Trenches are being dug on the beaches. And the plant in Saki produces anti-tank Tetra-air drones. It will be difficult for Ukraine to deoccupy the peninsula militarily, experts say. The problem is not only that Russia has managed to build up its defense in 8 years, but also the geographical characteristics of the region.
Military operations in Crimea more usually end with thousands dead. In the last century alone, hundreds of thousands have fallen at its gates, primarily in the Russian Civil War and the Second World War, to say nothing of the vast casualties during the Crimean War of the 1850s. Taking the peninsula has usually required crossing narrow, open strips of land or marshes. From The Economist publication.
However, given to the successes of the Ukrainian army in the counter-offensive, first in the north of Ukraine and then in the Kharkiv and Kherson regions, the liberation of Crimea from the Russian occupiers no longer seems as impossible task, analysts say.
Ukraine's hope of recapturing Crimea long seemed a far-fetched fantasy, but Kyiv's recent battlefield victories and Moscow's missteps have suddenly made it seem plausible, maybe dangerously so, from the Washington Post publication.
Ukraine is determined to return to Crimea by the end of spring. Such a forecast was made at the beginning of October by the head of the Ukrainian intelligence Kyrylo Budanov. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky also spoke about the resumption of the territorial integrity of the state, which means the deoccupation of the peninsula. Mikhailo Podolyak, advisor to the head of the office of the President of Ukraine, says he has already bought a ticket to Simferopol with an open date. He is planning a trip in the next 6 months.
The fall of Donetsk will create fundamental panic in the Crimean peninsula, and people will flee from there. There is a clear calculation. We have a very effective analytical structure of the main Directorate of Intelligence, and the President relies on absolutely clear, reasoned positions. And there is also objective information that our partners provide in terms of assessing the Russian resources capabilities. We mean shells, missiles, armored vehicles, how they repair facilities work, how mobilization is going at different levels, what the mood of society is like. Mikhailo Podolyak, advisor to the head of the office of the President of Ukraine, in an interview with the Aristokratia project.
The occupation of Crimea is perhaps the only real success of Moscow in the war against Ukraine since 2014. For the Kremlin, the peninsula has not only tactical, but sacral significance. Therefore, the loss of Crimea will be a disaster both for the course of the so-called special military operation and for Putin personally. Reported by Roman Smoler, Valeria Nikipelova, UATV News.